that you're worthy, you're respected, you deserve the best in life. And I think more and more times that we can tell ourselves and we can self-affirm that, the more we start to then truly believe that, and it becomes ingrained into who we are. So that when we do hear those negative messages, we tend to go, wait a minute, no, no, don't believe you. Thank you, but no, believe it. You know that that's something you shouldn't be taking in or absorbing because it's not true.
And then let's do a quick intro. Coleen is describe yourself for me.
I am a toxic relationship recovery coach who works with women who are in a cycle of toxic relationships. I help to teach them to build their confidence, learn the skills to break that cycle, and also what it's like to have healthy relationships. I help them find the journey and help them find themselves through healthy relationships as well.
I love it. Let's just jump right in.
Okay.
So we've got toxic relationships.
Yes.
We've got healthy relationships. How would you define each of those?
Sure. So that's a great question. So toxic relationships are those where one person, well, it's a relationship where there's no respect or trust. Oftentimes there's emotional abuse happening where the other party feels controlled, feels not respected, who is emotionally abused, which means they feel they're not treated or talked to in a way that is respectful. So over time, people who are in those relationships lose a sense of self, they lose their self-confidence and their self-worth, and they tend to just go through the rigmarole of the day, and they tend to accept being treated that way, where no one deserves to be treated that way. So that's a toxic relationship. Then you have a healthy relationship where both parties feel trusted, they feel respected, they've got open and honest communication, which allows them to be their true selves. They allow each other, to be supported. So, when you want to find your best self, and I think we're all on that journey to find our best selves, having that partner who supports you in that journey, who encourages you and helps you to thrive. And you feel when you're in that relationship that you are a whole person. Because a lot of times I think especially in toxic relationships, people tend to lose the sense of self. So they lose themselves and they forget who they are. They forget what opinions and thoughts they have, and they become absorbed in that relationship. Whereas in a healthy relationship, you keep and maintain that sense of self, and your partner wants you to have that sense of self because that's who they fell in love with, the person you are.
So I heard you talk about respect, trust,
mm-hmm.
communication,
mm-hmm.
and a sense of self.
Yes.
So I am a whole person. I feel respected. I can trust my partner. We communicate well. And
Right.
then we come together, things are even better, exponentially better than if we were apart. But this person doesn't overpower me, or I don't give up my power to this person in this unhealthy relationship.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love it. And then how do you find yourself helping women that are in these suboptimal or toxic relationship?
I think a lot of it comes from my own journey and really, sharing my story with women and with people about, so I understand the pain. I understand the loss of sense of self, because I had a series of toxic relationships. I would say most of my relationships in my 20s and 30s were toxic in one form of another. In my mid to late 20s, I met my first husband. He was this kind, supportive person. I was going through a lot of difficult times at that point, and he was that person for me, or at least I thought he was. And while we were dating, it seemed that way, although there were some red flags, some of his controlling behavior and his temper. He had a really bad temper. Some of those things came to light, but because I was so used to having toxic relationships and not really feeling that I deserve to be treated well, that I deserve to be treated with respect, I saw those red flags and I just kind of like, oh, okay, they're there, but I really love him. He's my person, all that stuff. So, and anyway, so we ended up getting married and we were together for 20 years. And during that time, during the first couple of years, I started seeing more and more of this pattern start developing where, he became much more controlling. He wanted to know who I was seeing, who I was talking to, even though, they were just friends or just work relationships. He wanted to kind of control my being. And I never, then slowly started to lose who I was. I didn't have a person with a voice anymore. And I didn't have any self-respect or self-confidence. And that really impacted not only my relationship with him, but it also impacted my relationship with my girls. I have two girls, and, raising them in a toxic relationship was, it was awful, to be honest. I don't know what else, the other word to use for it. And luckily, they've been able to find their own relationships in their lives. Now they're 35 and 36, and they've been able to find healthy relationships, but it was also a process for them. But being in that 20-year term, it took me a long time to, I guess after a while, I started telling myself, oh, I deserve this, or, it's not that bad. You start talking yourself out of leaving that relationship. So by sharing my own story with my clients, and because I understand their pain, I understand when, they're not ready to leave yet for whatever reason, or when they tell me, I really love him and I really don't want to leave him. I know what that feels like, because I was there. I was one of those people that felt all of those emotions. And when my friends used to tell me, why don't you just leave? It was hard to explain to them. It's not that simple. There's a lot of emotions. There's a lot of stuff going on that I need to unpack as well, in order for me to say, okay, I'm ready to move on.
I appreciate you sharing this story, and I'm sure it resonates with people when you share this experience. And what I'm hearing is there's stuff from your past, maybe relationships that you saw as a young person, how this has affected your girls who are now young adults or medium adults. And then how getting to know someone, right? It takes years to really get to know someone. In that first honeymoon dating phase of like, isn't he dreamy? And then you're like, that was a little flare up with his temper or whatever. And then by that time that you've gotten to know the person, then what they call a sunk cost, when you've invested all this time and energy into the relationship. And you're exactly right, getting out of it. Other people might say, well, just leave him. And you're like, I have kids and I have all these things now. It's not just that easy. But it sounds like the really important part is you coming back here, right? Coming back to sort this out, not past, future, other relationships. So how, Coleen, how do we get this part sorted out? Oh my gosh.
And that's the hard part. You're absolutely right. Once I was able to make that decision, to say, okay, I ready to move on. I'm ready to leave this relationship, and making those things happen, going through the divorce process and all of that fun stuff. Then it was, okay, now I've got to heal me, because I've got to work on me, and I've got to figure out, what does a healthy relationship look like for me? But before I can even think about having relationships with other people, I have to help myself. I have to heal me first, so that I can have healthy relationships. So that took a lot of soul searching. It took a lot of work on my part. I had a coach at that point too, who helped me try to understand who I was, who was my authentic self. Because obviously the traits you have as a human being, over time, of course, because of my relationships, I lost a lot of those characteristics, was me. I lost who I was. If somebody at that time was to ask me, well, who are you? I go, I really don't know, because I've lost that person. They're gone. It's been overshadowed by this other person who doesn't even know who they are. So I went on a soul searching journey through coaching, through, on my own research, through just really understanding who I was and really giving myself time to heal. Because I think a lot of times we don't give ourselves enough time to heal, understanding the fact that when you're in a difficult relationship, whether you're together for a year, 10 years, 20 years, whatever that time frame may be, you still need time to heal. You can't just jump right into another relationship and expect a different result, because you're not ready to have that different result yet. So it's just that time.
Doing some self-reflection,
yeah,
really thinking about who you are and what you need,
Right.
And then giving yourself that time and space to heal before jumping into the next thing.
Exactly.
And we're talking today a lot about sort of probably a boyfriend or husband type relationship, spouse, significant other. But there's other toxic relationships, right? There's some that you might not be able to walk away from, like a boss or a coworker. What about the people that they're in your life and they maybe either annoy you or the relationship isn't healthy? Do you have any good tips for how to address that?
Oh, that's a great question, because you're absolutely right. And I found myself, interestingly enough, even though I had a toxic relationship with my spouse, but it also kind of made it that I started having or not started, but I had toxic relationships with other people too. Because you tend to, if you have one or two toxic relationships, they kind of tend to overflow into others. So to answer your question about a boss as an example, and I've worked with clients who have just that. They've had a boss who was, difficult in terms of being condescending, in terms of not being respectful, toxic relationship stuff. So how do you handle that? So my thought with them is to really, first and foremost, I work with them because I want them to feel good about who they are. Because a lot of times whether it's a coworker or boss toxic, whether it's friends, parents, whoever, you still tend to, after a while, lose your sense of self too, and your confidence tends to erode from those relationships. So it's first and foremost working on yourself to know that you deserve to be in healthy relationships. And what do those look like? So I work similar journey with clients who are in romantic relationships, really working with them to say, who are you? And who is this person you want to be, and where is that confidence? And let's get that confidence back. Let's do a lot of this motivation work to make sure you get to be who you are first and foremost. And then as part of that work is also working with them on then understanding what those next steps look like with their boss. Can they have a discussion with their boss about how they're being treated? And if they feel like, yes, I can have that discussion, then I work with them as, what is that discussion going to look like? What are you going to say and do? And how are you going to say it so that it's comfortable for you to say those words? Because a lot of people don't like conflict, and I'm one of them. But how do you then craft a message to your boss that is authentic to who you are, but is also getting your point across about, this is the way I deserve to be treated. This is the way I want to be treated with respect, and having those conversations first and foremost. Now, if that conversation doesn't go well, your boss still is not willing to make any changes or doesn't feel that they have done anything wrong, then finding out from them, what is the next course of action within your organization? Can you go to an HR? Can you go to your boss's boss? What can you do to change or help not minimize, but change that relationship with your boss, if at all possible? And then, of course, the last recourse for a lot of people, some don't mind doing it, others do, is then finding another job, if that becomes your path that you need to take. But again, there's other things that need to happen or can happen before you take that last step. But really, the work comes with also figuring out who you are too, and working with you. And so, because then when you have that conversation with your boss, you're coming from a place of confidence, respect, but also being able to share your views, but in a way that is not, a conflict. It's in a way that serves you, that you feel comfortable having that conversation, but giving you not only the tools, but also the encouragement, the motivation to have that discussion.
So we're coming back to, again, what am I up to? What are my little parameters that I'm going to set for myself? What is it that I want to have as a goal, or what little box do I create for myself? My boundaries, right. Setting these healthy boundaries and establishing them with your boss, your coworker, right. And then how and when to clearly communicate, because we don't like controversy. We don't like conflict. We don't like difficult conversations are difficult. So you help your ladies work through all of this.
Yes. And really having those conversations, because you're absolutely right. No one really enjoys conflict, but how do we how do you deal with conflict in the way that that's comfortable for you? Because we all have our ways of dealing with conflict. And when most people think of the word conflict, they tend to run away from it, or they tend to overreact. Sometimes an overreaction happens because you're not really sure how to deal with that, those anger and frustration that you're feeling. So you may overreact because of it. So it's really finding your path, the person's path to handling conflict. What is the way that's authentic to you and is comfortable to you to handle that conflict, and then have those conversations, but also know that there needs to be also a plan in place. So if you talk with your manager and you can resolve issues and things work better, great. But if that doesn't happen, what are the steps you can take after that to then, ensure that you can have those healthy relationships in the workplace? And what do you need to do to make that happen?
So it sounds like you help your ladies with self-reflection, and then also these action steps of now, what action do I need to take to
Right.
enforce these boundaries, to set up my little box I've made for myself.
Right.
Speaking of action steps, you have a class coming up on Thursday, yeah?
I do. Thank you,
Tell
Anne,
us.
for bringing that up. So I've got a webinar masterclass that I'm putting on. It's a free masterclass. It's called 5 Strategies on What to Do If You Are in a Toxic Relationship. So I talk about 5 strategies, one of them being, putting together a safety plan, and a safety plan in a sense of, what do I do next? So now when I'm ready to leave, what does that look like for me? Can I put a plan in place for that? And also putting together a sense of community. I talk a lot about putting together a community, because a lot of times, and I was one of these people, a lot of times when you're in a toxic relationship of any kind, you tend to become alienated from any kind of support structure. So it's really important to build that support structure for yourself and make sure you've got people that you can go to and talk to. And even if it's a coach as well, having somebody in your community that you can go to and talk to them, and they can help you put together next steps that work for your situation. And then so it'll be 5 strategies. We'll talk through that. And I'm really hoping that people will resonate with those strategies, and it'll help them, wanting to make that next step if it serves them at that point. But knowing what they can do, you're not stuck. Because I hear a lot of times from women, well, I'm just stuck. Well, no one's stuck. You don't have to be stuck. There are things you can do to get out of that situation, or things you can do to plan as to when that exit will happen. So that exit may not have to happen today if you're not comfortable, but what do I need to do to make that happen? What steps can I put in place to put together a plan that when I am ready, I know exactly what I need to do for myself.
Right. And when we're stressed, our options are limited, right? We have this little view of the world. We don't sit and relax and go, well, I have all these. I could go stay with so-and-so for a few weeks, and I can call this friend. Either intentionally, right? An abusive partner might start chipping away at your friend group, limiting your outside, people that you have relationships with, cutting off those relationships, or making you feel as if you don't have any other support. Exactly. So getting that support system in place and establishing that is I like that plan even before the escape plan of reestablishing or establishing healthy relationships with other people, connection.
Right.
This is such good stuff. Such good stuff.
Yeah. So that's, it's really, and a lot of times when I talk with my clients and I can truly understand what they're feeling, it's not only the pain that I understand, but it's also, the struggle, because, these women are, the people that I've come across and worked with are just vibrant, they're just so much power within them. They just don't see it. They don't see the power they have because they've been spending so much time being put down that I look at them and I go, geez, you've got all this power. You've got all of these skills that you could be using. You're such a strong, capable person. And I want you to see that. And I want you to, really relish in that. And then know that you can do anything you want to do as long as you put your mind to it. Women are so amazing and so powerful. But when we're in these situations, whether it's a woman or a man for that matter, when you put into a situation where you're put down all the time and you're, taught to not feel that you are important or you are valuable, you tend to forget that you truly are. And when you start working with and being around a community of people that say, no, no, you are awesome. Look at all what you can do. Then, you just, it's just amazing how people, you just see. And that's why I think my logo is a butterfly, because then I see these women, they're in their cocoon when they're going through this struggle. They feel like you said, their world is only this big, or their support structure is only this big. And then you see them start coming out of that cocoon and truly spreading their wings and seeing their strength for what it is. It's just empowering. It's just amazing. And when I see that happen to women, it's like, yeah, that's why I work. That's why I do what I do, because I just love seeing that transformation. It's just amazing.
I love it. That must be so rewarding to see someone watch this journey from
Yes.
being very tight thinking and feeling trapped to feeling like they have this abundance and confidence and connection and ability. Now, we've been talking about mostly women. Most of my clients are women, but have you encountered any men in abusive relationships? Like, we just watched this whole Johnny Depp thing. Everybody's got an opinion about that. My take was like, I was assuming that there was some abuse going on for him, that's frowned upon to even talk about men being abused or men being manipulated by women. Women can be very manipulative and abusive, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And to answer your question, yes, I worked with a few men so far, mostly women, but I worked with a few men who were abused, and emotionally and physically, really. But you're right. It takes a lot for them to talk about it. They don't want, they just dismiss it. Oh, my wife has just got angry, or whatever the case may be. It takes a lot for them to admit that abuse is happening to them. And so, yes, I have a couple of people that I've worked with, a couple of men, and it's really, it's a similar journey in a sense of, they may not show it as much as women do initially about, their self-confidence not being there, or not feeling about who they are. They may not show that initially, and they may not open up initially, but when they do, it's just amazing to say, you don't need to be treated this way. No one needs to treat you this way. Whether you love them or not, or whatever the case may be, nobody deserves to be treated badly. And that has nothing to do with you as a person. Ego aside and everything else aside, nobody deserves this. So it's really having them understand that, first and foremost, nobody deserves to be treated this way. And secondly, you deserve to be treated with love and respect as anybody else does. So yes, it's a journey for them as well, but a similar journey. It just takes them a while to get to that point where they're saying, okay, you're right. It's happening. I'm not going to make excuses for it anymore. And I'm willing to work on me. I'm willing to work on myself to leave this relationship or make the changes that I need to make in order to be a healthy person.
Right. So it sounds like it takes maybe longer for the men to open up. Maybe women might be more initially more open, but once they do, maybe it's like floodgates opening and they can really work through some stuff quickly.
Exactly.
And then what about like the shame? And I feel like all the mental health stuff, it's changed a lot since when I was a kid. It's not so much a shameful thing now to come out and say, hey, this thing happened to me, or I'm struggling. But that's a big part of why people don't ask for help, right? Of like, there's something wrong with me if I'm putting up with this.
Absolutely. And it still exists. The shame and the embarrassment is still very real. And for a lot of women, or a lot of people, especially men, it's very prevalent, meaning, to say that, or to put that spotlight on yourself to say, this is happening to me, why am I allowing it? Because, then you've got people who tell you, well, why did you allow that to happen? Well, it's not that you allowed it to happen. It's just it takes time for those things to happen, but it's just a matter of where you are at, how are you feeling about yourself, the situations you're in, that can make those things happen. It has nothing to do as to who the person is. It can happen to anybody. But you're right. A lot of the shame, embarrassment still is there. And that's why I remember that for myself going through my journey. I never talked about it with anybody. And I think a lot of it was the shame. Number one, why am I in this? Why am I putting myself in this position to begin with? Why I'm not leaving? Because those things run through your mind. And then secondly, what kind of person am I to allow this to happen? Something, what is wrong with me? I must really be so flawed and damaged that I'm allowing this. So giving those, when you think about that, then I don't want to share it because I don't want people to think that I'm this broken toy, that is so broken that I'm beyond repair and I'm allowing myself to be treated this way. So, and I think that still exists, even though I think nowadays we're much more open about the struggles we deal with in relationships, which is awesome because then people feel comfortable opening up to what has happened. But I still think that shame and embarrassment still exist for the most part. And so people won't open up to and admit that they're having these situations, until they're ready or unless there's somebody they can trust that they can, get support from.
I love it. And then if someone was watching this video and let's say they're not ready to reach out to you yet, or they're not maybe to that point, but if there's one thing you could tell them, if they have a boss that's an awful communicator or has unrealistic expectations or treats them poorly, or if they're in a husband and wife or spouse type relationship where it's toxic or unhealthy, is there one thing we could tell this person right now? A thought, an action step, what advice would you give them? Some kind of little baby step to get them going in the right direction?
I think, one of the baby steps would be, it's like you don't deserve it. It's just really understanding, even though, in their mind, they might think, oh, I'm in this situation. I think one of the things I would like to tell them is that what is being told to you is not true. We tend to believe because we don't feel good about who we are, perhaps, or so we'll start to doubt when someone says, oh, you're this person, or you're doing this wrong, or you're not a really great person, or whatever the case may be. Unless we've got a strong sense of self, we tend to start believing that. We start to think, oh, maybe there's some truth to that. Am I really not, you start to doubt who you are. So I think my thought or my hope, if you will, would be not to buy into that. And as hard as it may be, because if you're getting those messages, those negative messages from other parts of your life, whether it's coming from work, it may be coming from home, or it may be coming from other areas. So it's like anything else. You hear it often enough, you tend to start believing it. So my thought with my tip or my goal or my wish, I guess, would be not to believe those things. They're not true.
So maybe take in the information that and analyze it and go, is that true? Am I really this person that they're saying I am? And just noticing the messages you're getting and going, is that true for me? And then maybe talking to yourself really sweetly, like you are someone that is truly valued and loved, like how you would talk to a close friend and go, you can do this. I'm proud of you. You're doing a great job. You're going to make it through this, that kind of self-talk.
Absolutely.
You're a dummy. You deserve this.
And that's so true. Like you brought up in the beginning, is people you often forget about talking to yourself like you are talking to your best friend. Would you talk to your best friend the way you talk to yourself? No. But we tend to do that. I did that a lot, like, putting yourself down. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. Was really stupid. Or, geez, maybe I am not as smart as I think I am because so-and-so said that. No, really, like you're talking about, really start to say, no, that's not true. But really look at what is being said. Feedback is a gift in some respects. Look at what the feedback is, but then choose for yourself that feedback is not true, because this is one person's perspective. Doesn't mean you have to accept it. And look and truly, like you're talking about, truly who you are. And I really believe, and I do it myself, positive affirmations are such a key to keeping that, a great voice in your head to tell yourself that you're worthy, you're respected, you deserve the best in life. And I think more and more times that we can tell ourselves and we can self-affirm that, the more we start to then truly believe that, and it becomes ingrained into who we are, so that when we do hear those negative messages, we tend to go, wait a minute, no, don't believe you. Thank you, but no, believe it. You know that that's something you shouldn't be taking in or absorbing because it's not true.
You've hit the nail on the head. If we can cultivate this skill of filtering the messages and going, is that really true? And should I just ignore this piece of it? Or should I use this and to give, think about it. Is this really what's happening? Maybe, maybe not. Coleen, this has been so helpful. Tell us how to get on your Thursday call.
Yes, there is a link on. I can put it in the. Do you want me to put it in the chat or?
I'll post it in the video
Okay.
text below.
Okay.
And is it on your website?
It is on. Actually, it's not on my website, but I do have a link to it. And I've got a landing page, and I'm still learning technology.
I'll put the link, and then best way to
then
reach out to you: email, phone, go to your website.
if they could go to on my email, which is connect@coachingwithcoleen.com, is the best way to reach me. I do have a website, which is www.coachingwithcoleen.com. And I'm so excited to have this masterclass on Thursday. I'm hoping that it'll be helpful to women who are just trying to take those steps to say, I need to make a change. How do I do that? What do I need to do?
Where do I start?
Where do I start?
I love it.
Absolutely.
Thank you for chatting with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Anne. It's been awesome. I appreciate your time.
I appreciate you.